All right, everyone. As of today, you have effectively the final hearing for Julian Assange, whether he's going to be extradited to the United States or not. His wife has said he's not in a physical shape where if you extradite him, he's likely to survive. And if you put him in a U.S. prison, even if he were in good shape, he probably wouldn't survive long. He might get shanked. He might get Epsteined or something like that. I'm not saying Julian Assange does that sort of thing, but you know what I mean. The cameras turn off and then you magically hang yourself with braided toilet paper or something like that. And it's single ply. I suppose if you charge up his commissary, he can afford the two-ply toilet paper. It'll be easier to hang himself when the cameras shut off and the guards happen to wander off and fall asleep for a couple of magical hours while people hear screaming from your cell. That's basically what happened, and I wouldn't be surprised if they try to kill Julian as well. Now, I do believe that Assange should be freed. He did nothing wrong. Wikileaks and everyone should be supporting. It's link in the description, archived, of course, just a brief story about it. Julian Assange did journalism. The fact that he solicited secrets from another person. Okay, what does MSNBC do? When they get a tip from somebody, hey, I've got some dirt on this politician or something that might be classified, what do they do? Or at least they did back in the old days. Journo goes out with the trench coat on, meets him in an alley and says, what do you got? Wow, that's some good shit. Okay, we'll report on this. Muckraking and stuff like that. It's called journalism. The exposure of state secrets, which should not be secret to begin with, is no crime. It's been made a crime in the especially post 9/11 world by various governments. I would note that nobody in the West has a problem with the fact that Julian Assange dumped a bunch of Kremlin files that one time. Those are still there, by the way. Putin would, though. If he went to Russia, he'd probably be held under the same conditions now, wouldn't he? I mean, by now he'd probably be dead, in all honesty. He would have gotten garroted or something like that by now in a Russian gulag. How are we so hypocritical that we have no problem with the U.S. government seeking extradition for whistleblowing in journalism that is and the act being commensurate with what we would generally associate with an Eastern Bloc country, with China, with Russia, with Turkmenistan or Iran or someplace like that? It's the same fucking shit, different asshole. The only difference is that we've shined up that illegal system, the so-called justice system, which mainly is the injustice system. We've shined it up and polished it, and it looks a little bit less brutalismus. That's the only difference, people's perception. My government would never do that. Well, your government is trying to get this dude extradited to kill him, to put him in the cell until he dies. He's been in prison for years in the UK under draconian conditions already. The basic argument being, hey, conditions in the U.S. prisons and the persecutorial aspect, they're even worse. He doesn't even realize how good he's got it here in the UK, being held probably in solitary for extended periods of time with very little access to his wife or to his lawyer. Well, he did nothing wrong. Wikileaks has published document and after document and batch after batch for years and years and years. But it's only when he becomes a problem for the current U.S. administration that he gets gulagged. By the way, there are people out there who say, well, Trump should have pardoned him. I fucking agree. I absolutely agree he should have pardoned Assange. Problem being that he would be called a Russian agent for doing so because Julian Assange works for the Kremlin. We know this because he filed off State Department secrets that he secretly solicited. Now, that's not true, but again, you have to pitch to Joe Public. About the only saving grace is the vague possibility that Trump in his second term, because he no longer gives a fuck, is actually nuts enough to pardon him. It's possible, by the way. Also, the other problem is, well, let's say they free him. So they decide, okay, we can't extradite him. We find nothing particularly wrong. And I don't think that'll happen, unfortunately. They let him go and he immediately gets shot in the head the second he walks out of the courthouse. Because he's a marked man. And by the way, Assange is well aware of this. Why do you think his mental state reportedly is in decline? It's because of that. He's under constant stress. He knows that he's going to die. Imagine knowing that for years and years. Okay, I've been kicked out of the Ecuadorian embassy where things weren't already particularly great, but at the very least, I had, relatively good food and a cat, and I could go out on the balcony and talk to people and have visitors and shit. Including that one, was it Pamela Anderson, I think, visited him at one point. I bet he got jiggy with her, by the way. It was probably tape from the Ecuadorian embassy's cameras there of them banging or something like that. That was before he got married, so it's okay. But, of course he should be freed. He didn't do anything wrong. It's just that if you free him, he dies. Again, he's aware of this. You'd need a real sophisticated operation, like Citizens would have to amass around there like they know he's going to be released, form a meat shield, hustle him off, and disappear him in order for him to be safe. Because half the governments in the world want him dead. The United States government wants him dead. The UK's government probably wants him dead. The Swedish government was gunning for him for a while, although I think they dropped the spurious charges against him. You think he's going to be considered a friendly asset to the Europeans at large, like the EU? Can he go there? No, not really. Canada's the bitch of the US, so he can't really go there. He's published state secrets on the Russians, so he can't go to an East Bloc country. He'd have to disappear into Mali or something like that. He'd have to go to Ecuador. Apparently, they would actually tolerate him. He'd have to go to some tin horn country and effectively disappear. I mean, at some point, it's like, what's even goddamn the point? He's a marked man by all of these different governments because WikiLeaks did its due journalistic diligence. It's something that state-run media doesn't do. In Russia, the media is state co-opted. You're not getting real news. In the United States, post-Obama, removing the prohibition on domestic propaganda, other than when the legacy media was lying to you about how bad Orange Man was, you haven't gotten any clear reporting. And that was compelled behind the scenes by the same deep state too. You don't have a free media in most of the world. The free media is this. This is the free media, and that's being censored to hell too. Look at the big tech and the Twitter files and all of these other things, the adpocalypse on YouTube. Why do you think these things are happening? They said, oh shit, people are growing a bigger consciousness about what's going on. The tech revolution has allowed the publication of sensitive documents to enormous numbers of people so that we can't get it disappeared. We can't Stalinize it. There's too many people that have too many copies of it. This is also the reason why your computers are being turned into dummy terminals, incapable of storing their own information. That's their end goal. Everything is proprietary, everything's in a cloud somewhere, and you lose access to it if they decide to press a button. That's what they're doing. Within 5 years, they'll have accomplished this. So keep your older computers and keep them refurbished real well, and never install anything new on them, unless you absolutely have to. And make sure that you're familiarized, you're going to be able to use Google to find these things, familiarized with programs and give you that older user experience. I've got half a dozen of them on my computer. Hell, Windows 10 is better than Windows 11. Even that needs a lot of tinkering with. You got to get rid of Windows Updater, that's for sure. And good luck getting rid of it unless you want to scour a little bit for how to do so and actually keep it gone. Assange did nothing wrong. The persecution of Assange is a symptom of a dying uniparty that's becoming desperate because people trade too much information too quickly for them to be able to suppress. That's about all. Peace out.